Good evening, and thank you for being here with us tonight. You know, there's a lot going on in the world, and that you would spend time with us tonight learning why legacies matter. I'm so excited I can't contain myself that we are at the Roots 101 Museum, a museum that's not fully open, a museum that's a vision of a man you're about to meet, a museum that has already won awards for making sure that everyone knows that legacies matter. Join me, Facebook fans, in welcoming, wherever you are, outdoors, indoors, in your living room, in your kitchen, clap and welcome the visionary who decided that this legacy could heal America, Mr. Lamont Collins.
Well, thank you for the great introduction, but just a humble man trying to do great things. I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I had a vision to do a museum for some time. Roots 101, I always want to name it Roots 101 because in higher education, the first class you take is a 101. So each level is 4 levels to the museum. Each level tells a story and a journey. The lower level will be a slave ship. When you enter, you see a village. Then you walk through the village. You see 4 enslaved people that are on front of the ship, about to go in the ship. They get on the ship, and on the other side of the ship, there's 2 people. You wonder why I went from 4 to 2, because everybody didn't survive the journey. That's why we're survivors also. We really look at history and tell history for what it is. We are kings and queens that were enslaved in America. And I repeat that, kings and queens that were enslaved in America. And that's a game changer when you tell young people that they're descendants of kings and queens. And that's the reason for Roots 101. When you come on Museum Road, that normally that we don't see our story, that our story is being told 365 days a year. And that's the reason Roots 101 is here.
And for those of you who don't know, Roots 101 is on Museum Road on Main Street in Louisville, Kentucky. It's one of the well-known places where people and tourists and people come to see what's available in Louisville, Kentucky. Now what's available is the history and the legacy of people.
That's right. And we're located at 1819 West Main, right beside Fraser Museum, right across from Slover Museum, right next door to, I think, the Sons of Revolution. So we're here to stay. And then when you think about the setup of the museum, if you go to the back on the 4th floor, we're on the 4th floor, it's the Ohio River. The Ohio River was the symbol of freedom for slaves when they came here. Is when they escaped Ohio River to Indiana, that was freedom. In slavery, they call it the River Jordan. So that's the River Jordan we're looking at today. And when we come to this museum, we have a sense of healing and a sense of pride at the same time. Because I say it's not a museum, it's a healing place. And people say, why do you say that? Because when we come together as Americans and we tell this full story how we all work together, that's when America was its best. America never was great for all people in America, but it strived to be better when we work together. And that's the purpose of Roots 101.
And notice it says strive to be better together. I'm not saying anything, but look around and see where you see that. Now, I'm really interested in, once you had the vision of opening this museum, where did you get your stuff?
Well, I've been collecting ever since I was about 14 years old. And then some of the collection belongs to other people here too. Maybe one of my greatest partners is out of California. I'm an avid NPR listener. I'm listening to NPR one day, and me and my wife going to Kroger's, and it's a gentleman known by the name of ONZ out of California. ONZ had a African American Museum in California. Urban Renewal came through, moved him out. He had 12 railroad cars of African American history in his backyard in the Mojave Desert. So they're talking on NPR on a Saturday. I turned to my wife and said, I'm going to talk to him. She said, you're not going to get him on a Saturday. So she comes back out of Kroger's, and guess what? I'm talking to him on the telephone. So I said, ONZ, my name is Lamont Collins in Louisville, Kentucky. I always wanted to do a museum, and before I got it out, he starts crying. He's crying, I'm crying. He said the Lord told him someone was going to call him about his passion, and his 3 million artifacts would be coming to Louisville, Kentucky. So that's the basic. I mean, everything we've done has been either spiritually or Christ-filled. I don't know if people get that, but we know 400 years ago, right on this spot, enslaved people came this same direction to go to Freedom, Indiana. We know that. there's a plaque that we're going to put in the back of the museum along with Fraser Museum that shows the date that they crossed the Ohio River to freedom. And we're here 400 years later doing a museum about the story. You know, that's bigger than me. You know, when I came up here looking for a place, you know, of course, being a new nonprofit, not a lot of money, say you can't get on Main Street, can't happen. Well, a young lady told me about a family that she knew had a building up here. And I came and talked to the gentleman that had the building. He was from Italy. He starts talking about how he's going to Italy with 30 family members. He's a wealthy man. And I looked at him and said, isn't it something you can go to Italy to see your family? I don't know where my family's from. When I said that, something convicted him to where he reached in his pockets and said, here, this is your home. And we'll deal with the issues when I come back from the building. There's nothing done. So what I've done, and what I've continued to try to do, is people understand the purpose of the mission, the reason we have to have. You know, this is no greater time in America that when they're trying to rewrite history to make sure history is written correctly. You know, and then I'll give you a prime example real quick. If we're true to ourselves in America, we know from the time we're 2 years old, we learn what? Colors. Right out of the crayon box. You learn black, you learn red, you learn green. Now, we don't learn racism, but we learn colors. So when people tell you they don't see color, it's impossible not to see color. That's what we're raised to see. Now, the question is, you see the character of the color, the character of the person, but you see color, right? So when you break down history and tell the true part of history and deal with all those elements, then we can talk about issues that are not really issues, and we talk about it. So then we talk about change. And I love this part of what we have in the museum. These chains are over 400 years old. They're from Ghana, one of the heaviest chains you want to feel. And if you think about those chains, America's history is in those chains. Yeah. I mean, the complete history of America is in those chains. People want to look and say, oh, it's just about enslaved people. It's not about enslaved people. It's about the foundation of America in those chains. From education to inadequacies of health care, to the voting rights, to law enforcement. All those things start with those chains. The way America was built. America was built on cotton industry, right? Mm-hmm. People don't realize, but the cotton industry, it took 10 hours for one person to clean a seed of cotton, okay? 10 hours. So then they created the cotton gin. Everybody knew about the cotton gin. Now it became mass produced, and you had to have slaves to do that. And then management came into play. So the whole basis of management and how to run people happened during slavery. Manufacturing, how Ford Motor Companies ran, how horses ran, because they learned how to put middle managers, they put overseers, they put trustees, all came from the history of these slaves. Think about that. The whole fabric of America is wrapped in those chains. And nobody takes the time to explain that to where it makes sense that if I say inadequacies, if you came to America and nothing was ever placed for you, how can it be for you? So you have to find a way to do that. That's how we had historical black colleges and things like that. But that's what I love about the change, because you go to political, like, give an example, the financial base of America. The land wasn't made, cotton itself, just using that example, cotton took more, over a 3-year period, you couldn't use the land to grow cotton again. So you had to find new land. Well, guess what America did? The landowners decided to take land from the Indians and continue to spread the land so they could do the cotton, right? So now they had all this free land that they gave to the white landowners to make money. And then land wasn't worth more than a slave. So what happens? They created a banking system. And think about the banking system. They didn't put land up as collateral, they put what? Slaves up as collateral. And then those slaves were traded all over England and France because the commodity was slavery. So here's people that were part of your financial background in banks today, all came from chains.
Wow. And that explains it so beautifully why the chains are the epicenter of America. And it also makes it even more profound that you say this history heals America. You already have so many different pieces in this museum. And I noticed on the 3rd floor, you have a section for the Black family. Mm-hmm. Talk about that. Okay. And just so you guys know, we're friends. Martin probably knows more about my family than I know, but he knows about the French 15, the history of my grandfather and my grandmother being here, and that's why his display on families is so impressive to me, because we have a large family.
Yeah, and the French family, and as an example, is so much you guys have accomplished to motivate people like me. And when you're a young black boy in Louisville, Kentucky, you look for families to implement or to be like. And there's no doubt that Frenchies, I mean, you had college professors or college presidents, you've had doctors, you've had corporate managers of Fortune 500. You don't get that anywhere, you know, and you got that in Louisville. And here you are, a colonel. So when I say legacies matter, I know they matter because I've seen them all my life. And your family is a great part of that. And I'm proud to know your family for that.
Thank you. And how did you conceive of the ideal of the family display downstairs with the military display, I might add?
Well, you know, family is important. I mean, role models are important. And everybody's a role model. When I say legacies matter, that means your input and what you leave here matters. So the part about the family is that when kids come in here, we've been told that we had no family backgrounds. We've been told that we're so separated, daddies are not at home. Well, I saw dads at home. My father was one of my biggest influences. So that's why family was important. That's why people don't understand that even in Kentucky, we had something, well, in Louisville itself, we had the biggest free population in the South. More Africans came here and stayed here from coming from Louisiana and places like that, coming off the boat in Portland and everywhere. So we have a large concentration of free black people here in Louisville, Kentucky. People don't, it was I think over 30% or something like that. And then you think about, even when you talk about the freedom to Indiana, a lot of times it was black families that was assisting the escape to Indiana. Not white abolitionists, but black families. So the history of Louisville was so great. Your family history, I can think of all the role models that I grew up with. And that's important. Kids need to see that. And that's why it's important to me. So that display you see down there, we have the first African-American troop in Fort Knox. We also have a picture of the Emancipation Proclamation. We have Frederick Douglass, actual Harper's Weekly edition of him. And everybody knows who Frederick Douglass is. We have the Blacks in Sports. So you look on one wall, you see the Harlem Globetrotters. You see the Harlem Magicians. And we tell the history of the difference. A lot of people think that the Harlem Globetrotters were always a clown team. Harlem Globetrotters were one of the best teams in the world. The reason they became clowns was white teams wouldn't play them anymore. And that's why they had to become clowns. And then you see the revolution of that, where players broke off from the Globetrotters and started the Harlem Magicians. This was black ownership. They said, hey, we can own our own team and do the same things. So you see a wall on that. You see a picture of Jackie Robinson, who was the first black in Major League Baseball. But the picture you see that I have is when he played football at UCLA, and he was a three-sport All-American at UCLA. People don't know that. And he also went in the armed forces. So I have a picture of Jackie Robinson. I have a signed football by Doug Williams, who was the first black quarterback to win the Super Bowl. So and then if you swing past that down there, and we just take a walk through, you'll see another area where you see instruments and African instruments. And people don't realize that Africans were one of the main reasons music ever hit America. There's one instrument that's called a kora. A kora is the forerunner of the banjo. So when Africans got to the Appalachian Mountains, guess what? They taught the Appalachian people how to play the banjo. So when people hear bluegrass music, all partners of African music. You know, so those are stories we don't know. So and then you see a picture. One of my favorite things is you see a little statue there that has Jocko Graves. Jocko Graves is a statue that you see in yards where they dress like a jockey. And people don't know their story. You see them all in the South. Well, the story of Jocko Graves was a 13-year-old boy that worked for or was a slave of George Washington, our first president. People don't realize our first president had slaves, right? And Jocko, what he called one of his favorite slaves, Jocko's dad worked for him also as a slave. Well, when George Washington went to war on the Delaware River, one of the coldest days of the year, I think we hear in the history books, he asked Jocko to watch the horses. Jocko watched the horses. When George Washington came back from war, Jocko was froze to death on the bank of the river. Froze to death. Story says that George Washington was very hurt by losing his favorite slave, so he commissioned these statues to go in front of prominent people's houses. That's why you saw these statues throughout the South and throughout the North. And it had on the statue, Jocko dressed like a jockey, and he had a harness where he tied the horses off and he went to the houses. Well, the coolest thing about the Jocko story, when abolitionists got involved with it, they took Jocko to the South. And then when they took Jocko to the South, they replaced the harness with the lantern. So Jocko became a freer slave because the abolitionists would use the lantern to point directions to the Underground Railroad. And that's one of the cool stories. So I always say Jocko went from a faithful servant to a freer.
So there's so much here, so much that gives life. What's one of your favorites?
I think my favorite, when you were a kid, you watched Roots, and they had Kizzy and Kunta was the main character, right? Well, we found out that was more of a fictitious story, but there's a true story downstairs. It's Lucille and Dallas Thornton, and there's a plaque down by Market Street telling their story. And Mr. Thornton was raised in Maysville, Kentucky, and he married his wife Lucille, and there were slaves, right? No, he didn't marry her, but there were slaves, and they were trying to run to freedom, and they ran all over different states, different places, and then they finally made it to Detroit. It's two black people that were in love enough to continue to try to find freedom together. We don't hear that story. And then the story about going to Detroit was they got entrenched in the community of Detroit, and they were going to be sent back to slavery. And the black community revolted, and it was the first riot in the United States in Detroit, because this black couple and family and the community felt like they should be separated. So the story goes that Lucille escaped because one of her best friends came in, put on her clothes, and went out of the prison, and she went to Canada. And then later, after the riot, Detroit just felt bad. They didn't feel bad, but they felt embarrassed that this happened in their country, or in their state. So Mr. Thornton was able to get out too, and he made it to Canada, right? And then that's the reason you have the fugitive slave law, because they went to Canada. Canada said, no, we're not going to return them back to America. And that was the big exodus to black people going to Canada because of the Thornton family.
Wow.
Yeah.
The things that we don't know. Now, I know you are a great visionary, and once the museum is totally complete, what is it you want to leave children with?
Oh, wow. Self-awareness. A way to look in the mirror and see something in themselves. Not what people tell them they are, but what they know they are. Something that you was probably growing up with and just took for granted. But some of our kids don't know that. They don't look in the mirror and see themselves. They don't even draw themselves with 2 hands and 2 feet. So my greatest thing is to make them whole. If I can make them whole. One gentleman came from a school called Brackenridge. He about 7 young men. And when they got through, my biggest thing is when I handed those chains. I told them, hold the chains. And then I said, call him what you called him before you came out here. The N-word. Could not, would not call the other person the N-word after they held the chains in hand. Because they never understood the deepness and the hatred that came with the word till they felt the chains with the sting of the word. Think about that. 2020, and they didn't understand how detrimental, how vulgar that word was till they held those chains. And that's why I know this is meant to be. Now, the tragedy of what we're doing, or tragedy of what's going on in America now is the COVID-19. And when you talk about a startup museum that's been down for 3 months, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge if we can't raise dollars to make this happen. But it's a reality, and I've always been the kind of person, I've never been afraid to fail.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to fail to make the vision work. But it can work if people support what we're doing. There's no reason it shouldn't work.
Right.
But if we're waiting for other people to do it, it may not work. So that's what I found out. All right, thank you again. This is Lamar Collins, Route 101 African American Museum. Thank you for the opportunity to sit down with Colonel Stevenson and explain and talk to her about her vision and the vision of Route 101, and just thank you for your support. You can always go to YouTube and look us up, or www.roots101.org. But thank you very much. We appreciate you. And we have a lovely event space here. You can rent space anytime you want to. This is an awesome deck overlooking the Ohio River. And on the top, we have a rooftop deck. So please support us at Roots 101 as we support you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. One of the things we want to do is show you another part of the museum, which is this beautiful set. And I have to talk loud so you can hear me. I want to thank the people that hosted this tonight, and I want to thank my friend Lamont for having us tonight. Remember that legacies matter, and so do you.